of Orthodox spirituality.
Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy.
A wondrous journey into Orthodoxy.
Lord, have mercy.
Prepared and presented by Angeliki Antonakou, Lekea.
Lord have mercy, 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 Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy, 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 Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy.
Hello, dear listeners. We are continuing to read from the book With Pain and Love for Contemporary Man, the first volume in the series Spiritual Counsels by Saint Paisios.
Glory to the Father and to the Son.
High Office and Vainglory. I wonder how some people can attach so much importance to human glory rather than the glory of God, which awaits us when we shall depart from the glory of men. In what way will we benefit if we gain the highest office and the admiration of everybody? Will such admiration lead us to heaven or to hell? What did Christ say? I do not receive glory from men. John chapter 5, verse 41. How will it benefit me if from being a monk I became a priest monk, bishop, or patriarch? Would these offices help me save my soul, or would they be a burden on weak Paisios and send me crashing down to hell? If there were no next life, perhaps we could find a way to justify such nonsense. But he who seeks the salvation of his soul does not seek high office. He counts all things as rubbish in order to gain Christ. Compare Philippians 3 verse 8. Moses, in spite of being delegated by God to free the Israelites, was not deemed worthy of going to the promised land because he had become indignant with God on account of the people. For years he lived with their continual grumbling, and only once did he become indignant. They are asking for water, he said. Where am I supposed to find water for them? What do you mean where? Only a few days ago you struck at the rock and water gushed out and you gave them to drink. Was that so hard to do? But he was so tangled up in the concerns of his people that he had forgotten how much water had been provided earlier. And with his mind overwhelmed, he did not realize his mistake so as to ask forgiveness from God. Had he asked, it would have been granted to him. So God gave him a small cannon as a reprimand for his indignation. He would not enter the promised land. God, of course, received him in paradise and honored him by sending him with the prophet Elijah to Mount Tabor at the Lord's transfiguration. This example of Moses should help us understand that the responsibilities of high office can be a great obstacle in the Christian's journey to paradise. There are some people who, because of their inner and outer life, should have been filled with happiness, who, despite having been delivered by God from every kind of responsibility, but who nonetheless seek responsibility and offices. And when these are not given to them, they stew, wearing out their soul and their body, the temple of God, as St. Paul refers to it. Christ is preparing them for the glory of heaven, but they choose to enter paradise through human glory. Perhaps someone might object. Why is it that some people are glorified in this world and afterwards are also glorified by God? The truth is that those who seek human glory will never be glorified by God. We should never go out of our way to be given more responsibilities. Instead, we should rejoice when we are relieved of them, because they bring all kinds of worries. If we are not content, it means that pride is working secretly inside us. We should never pursue offices in order to receive glory, because that reveals the advanced state of a diseased soul. It shows that we are marching in a sick state on a path other than that of humility, the path on which the Holy Fathers walked to paradise. So many of our Holy Fathers avoided the responsibilities of high office. They did not wish to become an abbot, a priest, or a hierarch. Some went as far as mutilating a hand, a nose, an ear, or a tongue to be disqualified from ordination. Others were ordained when the roof of their locked cell was removed, or ordained from a distance, in absentia, like Saint Amphilochios. These were educated and holy men, but they had felt deeply the great worth of the soul and the burden placed on it by worldly responsibilities which stand in the way of salvation. So they would do anything to avoid them. In this way, they kept themselves on the right path. Even on the holy mountain, there are monks who view priesthood as an obstacle to the spiritual life. And the reason is that in addition to their usual responsibilities, if they were priests, they have to be present when a bishop pays a visit or attend various feasts and celebrations outside the monastery, which may be spiritual in nature, but still do not bring peace to one's soul. When I was at the cenobium, I met a deacon who grew old and died a deacon. When he was still a young monk, the monastery needed a deacon, and so ordained him. Later, younger monks arrived. While they became deacons and priests, he remained a deacon, giving his turn to everybody else. When they urged him to become a priest, he would say, "The monastery does not need more priests. God be praised. We have our younger brothers." Later, he was assigned to the administrative office. When educated monks joined the monastery, he asked to be relieved of this duty, and he was. When the monastery was going through rough times, this devout deacon pleaded with a virtuous priest to accept the position of abbot. His answer was, "How is it that you avoid responsibilities, but place a full load on me? If you become the supervisor, I will become the abbot." And that's actually what happened. When the troubles were over and the monastery returned to normal, he once again gave his resignation. This deacon helped me a lot. He was full of God's grace. When the holy community of the Holy Mountain had difficult matters to resolve, they always called on him to get his enlightened opinion. Yeroda, what drives spiritual people who have no interest whatsoever in money to go after glory? Is the ancient Greek saying still true? Money has been despised by many, glory by none. A saying of Cleovulos, political ruler of the ancient city of Lindos on the island of Rhodes, and one of the 7 sages of antiquity, 6th century BC.
Was sent from heaven to say to the mother
It's their empty heads that drive them. It's all about vainglory. The saying, money has been despised by many, fits the temporal, secular spirit. It has no place in the spiritual life. Ancient Greeks thought that way because they did not know the true God. Honors of any kind have no place in the spiritual life. Has anyone suffered more indignities than those suffered by Christ? The fathers asked for dishonor, and God instead honored them. These people are still in a temporal stadium. They play football and cheer the home team. PAOK, ΑΕΚ, Doxa, Glory. 3 Greek football teams. When we read about glory in the Gospel, it's a glory that is full of love and humility. Father, the hour has come. Glorify thy Son, that the Son may glorify thee. And this is life eternal, that they know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. John 17, verses 1 through 3. What Christ was asking of God was to allow people to know their Savior and be saved. But today, all that most people care for is how to acquire honors and recognition. They look for glory here and glory there, and in the end, it's folly they find. Folly here, folly there. This is what Christ meant when he said, "How can ye believe who receive glory from one another, and seek not the glory that comes from the only God?" John 5, verse 44. And St. Paul says, "But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived." 2 Timothy 3, verse 13. These things make my stomach turn. I could not survive in such an environment, even for 24 hours. Responsibilities can be a great obstacle to the spiritual life. Those who want to do spiritual work should stay away from them. Usually, those people who pursue high office and supervisory posts do not have a good end. That personal element, egoism, gets in the way, and then supervisors clash and fight with each other because both sides suffer from egoism. But those who work with philotimo, who do not comfort their egos by involving themselves in every little thing or single job, are those who help in a positive way. This is the only way that peace can come to the souls that need help, and to those who help them a peace for this life and for the life to come. In the old days, the fathers would first leave and go to the desert. There they strive to desert all their passions. Without any plans or designs of their own, they put their lives in God's hands and avoided high office and authority, even when they reached holiness. Only when our Mother the Church needed them did they practice obedience and accept God's will, glorifying His name with their holy lives. These men acquired a good level of spiritual health in the desert, where they lived on a good spiritual diet under the vigilant supervision of the fathers. They became, in other words, a kind of spiritual blood donor. The administration of the Church. The Orthodox Church has always been administered by synods. It is in the Orthodox spirit for the Church to be administered by synods, and for monasteries by the assembly of elders. Decisions are reached jointly by the Archbishop and the Synod, and by the abbot or abbess and the assembly of senior monastics. The Archbishop is first among equals, and the Patriarch is not a pope. He and the other hierarchs have the same rank. The Pope's rank is different. He sits up high, and others kiss his feet. but the Patriarch sits together with all the other hierarchs, and his work is to coordinate. This is also the relationship between an abbot or abbess and the members of the assembly of elders. The abbot or abbess is first among equals. An archbishop or an abbot cannot do whatever he wants. God enlightens a hierarch or an elder on one issue. He enlightens one about the other. You see, this is like the 4 evangelists who complemented each other. Here too, in the assembly of elders, each person will state his opinion, and if someone disagrees, his dissent will be recorded in the minutes. Especially in cases where a decision is contrary to the commandments of the gospel, those who disagree should have their dissent recorded. Otherwise, it will appear as if the decision was unanimous. If this person signs the document without recording his objection, he has actually done wrong and stands to blame. But if he makes his opinion public, even if the majority disagrees, he will be in good standing with God. When the synod or the assembly of elders does not function well, then we may say that we have the Orthodox spirit, but it is the Papist spirit that is at work. The Orthodox spirit says that each and every person has the right to speak and register his mind. No one should refrain from speaking out of fear or in order to flatter a superior or because he wants to be on good terms with the archbishop or the abbot. When clergymen enter church administration at a young age, even if they are qualified, it is to no purpose. They will be harmed. They will get caught up in the wheels of administration, of clerical work, and so on, and will not receive spiritual assistance, even though they may have great potential. Some men especially would have become great assets to the church had they worked on their spiritual lives rather than wasted their potential. When we are not concerned with ourselves, in the good sense of the word, when we don't work on ourselves, we are like merchants who buy and sell merchandise without keeping an account of how much they owe, until they end up bankrupt and in jail. I feel really sad when I hear of young priests working in an office. If they had been kept out of administration a while longer, they would have become a great help to others later in life. But unfortunately, it happens quite frequently that young and inexperienced priests are appointed to administrative posts rather than older, experienced priests who could have done a lot of spiritual work and benefited their flock. This creates double the harm. What I am trying to say is that before they've had the time to attend to spiritual work on themselves, and before they've acquired any spiritual wealth, young priests take on responsibilities, finding themselves in demanding posts. On the other hand, older priests who have valuable experience and are enlightened are not placed in positions of responsibility and do not get the chance to offer their services.
Rejoice, unwedded bride. Seeing the child exile, let us be exiles from the world and transport our minds to heaven. For the Most High God appeared on earth as lowly man, because he wished to draw to the heights those who cry to him, Alleluia, 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 Alleluia.
The Divine Liturgy. Yeroda. When the Divine Liturgy is celebrated, should there always be someone who will receive Holy Communion? Yes, because that's the main purpose of the Divine Liturgy, even if only a few are ready. All the prayers refer to the faithful who will be receiving communion. For this reason, it is important that there be at least one person who will take communion. Of course, once in a while, there is no one. But that's beside the point. At least someone, even a small child, a baby, should receive communion. And when no one is available, then it is only for the priest to receive communion and commemorate the names of the living and the departed. But this should be the exception rather than the rule. We get to live through the events of the New Testament at every Divine Liturgy. The Holy Prothesis, Table of Oblation, is Bethlehem. The Holy Table is the Holy Sepulchre, and the Crucifix is Holy Golgotha. All of creation is sanctified by the Divine Liturgy through the presence of Christ. It is the Divine Liturgies that sustain this world. What God has given us is so awesome, and we are so unworthy of it. There are priests who live this awesome mystery at every Divine Liturgy. A priest once told me that a very simple and good priest used to say, "I have such a hard time during the catalysis, the consumption of the holy gifts, at the end of the Divine Liturgy. My filthy tears fall into the chalice. I cannot contain them, and this makes me so upset." And he started weeping. So the other priest said to him, "Please, Father, ask Christ to grant me even a few of those filthy tears." Yeroda, why do you step down from the Stasidi, a church seat in an Orthodox church, when the priest says the prayers of preparation before the iconostasis, right before he enters the holy bema to put on his holy vestments? I step down because at that moment, as the priest is praying, God is sending him divine grace to rid him of his weaknesses and allow him to celebrate the Divine Liturgy. At this time, the faithful should also be praying with reverence, so that they may receive grace. The Divine Liturgy begins with the proskomidi, the service of preparation, oblation of the holy gifts. It's amazing how God sometimes allows us to understand and experience the holy mysteries. When I was the ecclesiastikos, something happened to me. Once, as the priest was cutting the prosphoron, the offering bread, and saying the words, "As a sheep he was led to the slaughter," I heard the quivering of a lamb on the Holy Hesychasterion. And again, when he said, "Sacrificed is the Lamb and Son of God, who takes away the sin of the world," I heard the bleating of a lamb coming from the Holy Prothesis. How awesome! This is why I tell priests not to prepare the proskomidi ahead of time and then do the rest symbolically. In other words, they should not cut the prosphoron earlier and then, when the moment comes, simply place the amnos, the lamb, upon the Hesychasterion. Rather, they should be making the actual incisions on the prosphoron as they are saying the words, "As a sheep he was led to the slaughter." They should take the lance and sacrifice the lamb the moment they say, "Sacrificed is the Lamb of God." When the priest rings the little bell at the time of the proskomidi, and you are silently commemorating the names of people, your heart should participate in the pain of every soul you mention, living or departed. You should bring to mind all the different problems faced by people. and then turn to those that you specifically want to mention and say, "For Maria, for Nicholas, Lord, you know their problems. Please help them." The names that people give you should be commemorated during several divine liturgies. You can do 3 liturgies for some, 5 for others, and 1 for all of them. Why should some names be commemorated at all times, and others, who may be in more need, not be commemorated at all? That's difficult for me to understand. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and so forth should not be commemorated at the divine prophecies. We cannot take out a portion for them or commemorate their names. What we can do is pray for their health and enlightenment, and even read the supplication service, praying for them. Yaroda, some priests say that they would prefer not to celebrate the Divine Liturgy very often. They don't want it to turn into a routine. This is not right. A priest should not be making such statements. It is like saying, "I don't visit my relatives often because I want them to miss me and give me a warmer welcome when they see me." Of course, it takes preparation to celebrate the Divine Liturgy. Holy Communion heals and sanctifies the person who struggles. But what help can it be to those who make no effort? If we don't try to change ourselves, how can Christ come and change us? Once, in the cave of Saint Athanasios, there lived an elder with 2 monks under his guidance. One was a hieromonk, priest monk, and the other a hierodeacon, deacon monk. One day the 2 monks went to a chapel to celebrate the Divine Liturgy. The priest was envious of the deacon and disliked him intensely, because the deacon was smarter and more capable than he in every respect. But the deacon also did not help the situation with his rather arrogant manner. The priest was prepared. He had done all the necessary things. He had read the preparatory prayers for Holy Communion, and so on. But unfortunately, he had left out the most important preparation, the internal preparation. He had not humbly confessed in order to expunge the malicious envy from his heart, things that will not go away by simply changing our clothes and washing our face. And so, being only externally prepared, he approached the awesome and holy table to celebrate the liturgy. And then, guess what happened? Suddenly, as he was starting the proskomidi, he heard a loud noise. The Holy Hesychasterion moved away from the prophecies and disappeared. The liturgy could not go on. My mind tells me that, given their psychological condition, something terrible would have happened if God had not intervened. Yaroda, if something happens during the Divine Liturgy, can it be interrupted? No, it cannot. When the Divine Liturgy is in progress, the priest cannot interrupt it, no matter what happens. Even if war is declared, he has to complete the liturgy. Even if the enemy is surrounding the church, the most he can do is hurry up and finish. God will help him finish, but one must trust in God and not be afraid. The celebrant of the Lord must be most watchful, pure, and exacting. This is because priests stand higher than angels. The holy angels cover their faces during the mystery of the Holy Eucharist. But it is the priest who, with his face uncovered, celebrates it. Dear listeners, thank you for listening. Our time is up. We will continue once again where we left off in our next show. Until then, be well.
Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy.
Traditions of Orthodox Spirituality.
Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy.
A wondrous journey into Orthodoxy.
Lord, have mercy.
Prepared and presented by Angeliki Antonakou, Lekea.